Hi everybody, welcome to a brand new lecture of the Ankit Faria Certified Ethical Hacker course. In this lecture, we're going to actually continue talking about how to crack all different kinds of passwords. In the previous lecture, we'd actually discussed some of the different types of passwords that you can crack, and we have started discussing Microsoft Windows login password cracking as well, which is when we kind of ran out of time. And I'd like to actually continue the lecture from exactly where we ended the previous lecture. Now, cracking Windows login passwords is actually a very important, very commonly found attack, yet it is always overestimated how difficult it is. In reality, it's not very difficult at all. And I assure you that by the end of today's lecture, all of you will be in a position to be able to crack Windows login passwords. Now, to be able to crack Windows login passwords, it's important to actually, first of all, understand where the passwords are stored, what is the security mechanism used to protect the passwords, and things like that. So let me actually go ahead and switch to my PowerPoint slides and go ahead and start with today's lecture. So the main topic of today's lecture is cracking Windows login passwords. And of course, once we are done with Windows login password cracking, we'll also discuss how to crack a variety of different other types of passwords as well. So I'd like to quickly recap some of the important concepts related to Windows login passwords that we had actually discussed in the previous lecture. The most important thing to remember about Windows login passwords is the SAM file. There are 3 facts related to the SAM file that everybody must know. Fact number 1, all of us know that the Windows login password is stored in the Security Accounts Manager file or the SAM file. Fact number 2, everybody knows the exact location of the SAM file. So it is actually in the Windows/System32/config folder, and a copy of that is available in the Windows/repair folder, and it is also available in the Windows registry. So if everybody knows that the Windows login passwords are stored in the SAM file, and if everybody knows the location of the SAM file as well, the big question is, why is nobody just able to go to that folder and steal the SAM file? This is where fact number 3 comes into play. And fact number 3 is the fact that the SAM file gets locked as soon as the Windows operating system boots. So once Windows boots, there is no way to access the SAM file, unless you're the administrator. And if you're the administrator, why would you want to steal the SAM file? You already know you're the admin, so there's no need to steal the password file. Quick overview of what the SAM file looks like. We had seen this slide even in the previous class. Typically, this is what the SAM file looks like. It has a bunch of rows. Every row is focused on a particular user. So the number of rows that the SAM file will have will be dependent on the number of user accounts that exist on that particular computer, right? And the format of the SAM file is that on each row, so each row represents a user, and each row has multiple sections. Section number 1 is the username, which in this example is Ankit Faria. Section number 2 is the user ID. Now, typically, if it's an admin account, the user ID will be 500. If it's a guest account, the user ID will be 501. And if it's a standard user, then the user ID will be somewhere in the thousands. So by just looking at the user ID, which is the second section or the second column in each row, we can actually determine the type of user that has that particular account. Next comes the LM hash of the password. So the LM hash of the password is no longer being used. So typically the latest Windows versions, in the third column, you'll basically just see no password. It'll literally say no password in it. The fourth column is the NTLM hash of the password. NTLM hash of the password is what we'll actually crack to or convert into the actual password. So that's what typically the SAM file looks like. And over the next few minutes, we'll actually learn a variety of different ways in which you can crack the SAM file. So like I had mentioned earlier, the LM hash is no longer being used, so I'm going to skip LM hash slide. NTLM hash is what is nowadays being used to securely store the Windows login password. So whatever password you choose is passed through a hash algorithm called NTLM hash, and it is then stored in the Windows SAM file. So now that we know what the SAM file is all about, let us actually go ahead and learn the various types of attacks that are possible against the SAM file. So the technique is Windows login password cracking. And there are two types of main attacks. You have online attacks and you have offline attacks. So what is the main difference between online attacks and offline attacks? Online attack means that it is a type of attack that is executed when Windows has already started. So in online attacks, Windows has already started. In offline attacks, Windows has not started. So, or booted, right? That's the main difference. Online attacks means Windows has already started. Offline attacks means Windows has not started. And for all practical purposes, please remember fact number 3 that we have discussed about the SAM file. Fact number 3 is that once Windows has already started, SAM file cannot be accessed by regular users. Only the administrator can access it. So online attacks are attacks that only admin can execute. And in offline attack, what happens is Windows has not started, which means that SAM file is still accessible and anybody can execute this attack. So online attack means Windows has already started, and since we have fact number 3 which tells us that once Windows starts, the SAM file cannot be accessed. So typically in online attacks, nobody can access the SAM file except the admin. So typically online attacks can only be executed by the administrator, and offline attacks can be executed by any user, because in an offline attack Windows has not started. As a result, the SAM file is still accessible, and hence any user can actually execute the offline attacks. So usually in most scenarios, most purposes, you should be focusing on the offline attacks, because online attacks, the chances of you being able to successfully execute it are pretty limited, because you must be logged in as admin or administrator to be able to execute an online attack. So now that we know the two different types of attacks, we are first going to focus on online attacks, and then we'll focus on offline attack. And then we'll keep expanding on this notepad file that we have created. So the first type of online attack is the following. There is a very interesting software called FGDump. FGDump. FGDump is available as a free download on the internet. What it does is, number one, it's an online attack, which means that Windows has already started, which means that SAM file can only be accessed as an admin, which means that FGDump is only useful if you are an administrator and if you're trying to steal the SAM file, or if you're trying to steal somebody else's password, right? And let me now give you a demonstration of FGDump. What FGDump does is, it dumps the password hashes from the memory or from the SAM file that it can access. So let me open up MS-DOS. FGDump runs from MS-DOS. So I open up MS-DOS, and I'm going to go to the folder of FGDump, and all you got to do is type FGDump. So I type FGDump, press enter, and wait for a few minutes. So if you notice, it's working on the dump, and eventually now it's saying that total successful attempts 1. Successful server is localhost. So it's done. So now I need to retrieve the dump. So let me go to the same folder as where FGDump has been installed. So give me a minute while I quickly open that up. So if all of you look at the screen, this is the dump. I'm going to change the font size so all of you can see it properly. Because right now it doesn't really make any sense. The font size is too big for us to make sense of it. So let me reduce that slightly. Hopefully that helps. Let me reduce it even more. And slightly more. Okay. So if all of you look at the screen, this is what the dump looks like. Essentially every line is dedicated to a different user. So let's look at the first line. You have the username as administrator, the user ID as 500. 500 means it's an admin account, and there is no password in the LM hash and there is no password in the NTLM hash. Essentially there is no admin password at all. So you can just press enter and you'll be fine. Then comes the Ankit Fadia account. The user ID is 1000, which means that it's a regular user. LM hash is not being stored because it's disabled. It's not that secure anymore, so it's been discontinued. And then the NTLM hash is available. So essentially what I did was, using the FG dump software, you dump the password hashes from the SAM file into this notepad file. So I can now take this notepad file to a brute force password cracking tool, which will then crack this NTLM hash for me and show me the output. So if I go back to that notes, so in online attacks, the first example of an online attack is, or the first step in an online attack is, you basically dump password hashes. And how do you do that? We just saw how to use FG dump to do that. Right? We will very soon see another software called PW dump, version 7. So that's step number 1. You dump the password hashes using FG dump or PW dump 7. Please remember, once again, I like to repeat this. This will only work if you're an admin. Otherwise, this is normally not going to work. Step number 2 is that you crack the password hash to reveal the password. So right now we have just taken a dump, because if you look at the log file that I had shown you earlier, we can't really see the actual password in the log file. If you notice, it's just some gibberish. It's basically the encoded hash. It's not the real password. So this is just the dump of the password hashes. So we need to now crack the password hashes to reveal the actual password. So we'll come back to it, how to crack the actual password, we'll come back to it. But step number 1 is to dump the hashes, and the first software that allows you to do that is FG dump. Now, the demonstration that I just showed you was a way to dump the hashes from your local machine. But if you are on a LAN, it is possible to dump the password hashes from a remote machine as well. And we'll very soon see how to do that using FG dump. But before that, so if you look at the screen, this is the dump that I just showed you. The same format of the SAM file is followed here. And if you want to FG dump on some other user, then this is what you gotta do. The command that you gotta type is fgdump.exe space -h followed by the IP address. In this case, I'll just type in my own IP -u followed by the admin username. So as soon as you run this, it will ask you to enter the password of the admin, and then you'll be able to dump the hashes. You can also use FG dump on some other system. So if you are on a LAN, maybe I'm on my system, but I know that the SAM file, I want to steal the SAM file of another system. So I can actually use FG dump on another system as well. And the command that I got to type is fgdump.exe -h followed by the other system's IP address. Please make sure it is another system on the same LAN as you. It can't be on the internet. -u followed by the admin username. So once again, since dumping of hashes is an online attack, and that means only the admin can do it, whenever you use this command, you must specify the admin username. It will then ask you to specify the admin password, and only if you do that can you actually access the hashes or the password dump. So that concludes the first software that allows you to carry out an online attack. Another software is pwdump7. It pretty much does the same thing, and let me try to give a demonstration of pw7 to all of you. This is basically a screenshot of what pwdump7 looks like, and I can actually give a demonstration of this software as well. So once again, it runs from MS-DOS. So I need to go to the folder where pwdump has been installed, and then I just type pwdump7, press enter, wait for a few minutes. It's going to try and dump the password hashes from the SAM file. It's an online attack and will only work if you're an admin. So if you notice, within a few seconds, the password hashes have been dumped. And let me actually copy the hashes for you, or just highlight them for you so that you can see them properly. Here, if you notice, the admin password has actually been dumped as well. Earlier in the previous software, fgdump, we were not able to get the admin password in the NTLM format. But here, if you notice, the admin password in LM format, obviously there's no password because LM format is no longer used. But NTLM, it is showing up. So pwdump is fabulous, and once you have the password hashes using fgdump or pwdump, you can actually use it to crack the password. Similarly, there's yet another software called samdump. Samdump, as you can look at the screenshot, comes with BACKTRACK, and it allows you to dump SAM hashes. So let me add samdump to this notepad file. So the first step in online attacks is you got to dump the password hashes. Until now, we have seen 3 different software that allow you to do that: fgdump, pwdump7, and samdump. Now, once you have taken a dump of the password hashes, the second step is you got to actually crack the hashes and crack the password. So this is where a software called Kane-Enable comes into the picture. In fact, Kane-Enable does 2 things. It not only helps you crack the password, it also allows you to dump the password hashes from the SAM file. So it kind of does both. So let me go ahead and write this down in step number 2. So you have Kane-Enable. Of course, all these tools are available as free downloads on the internet. Next, so if you notice, not only can you dump the hashes, you can also crack the hashes using brute force attacks and also using rainbow table attacks. Both types of attacks are supported by Kane-Enable. Another software that allows you to crack the password dumps is John the Ripper. It only uses a brute force or dictionary based attack. It does not support rainbow table attacks, at least as per my knowledge. John the Ripper. It's a free software available on the internet. So Kane-Enable and John the Ripper. So that concludes the online attacks that are possible on Windows login passwords. I like to quickly recap. Online attacks means Windows is already started, which means SAM file cannot be accessed by regular users, which means online attacks can only be executed by the administrator. And there are 2 steps that you need to execute. Step 1, you got to dump the password hashes from the SAM file. You can do that using 3 different software: fgdump and pwdump7 and samdump, which is in BACKTRACK. Step number 2 is that once you have dumped the password hashes of the SAM file, you need to actually crack the hashes and convert them into the plain text password. And to convert the hashes from the NTLM hash into the plain text password, you can make use of either Cain-enabled software, or you can make use of John the Ripper software. So that's how you can actually execute an online attack and crack somebody else's Windows login password. Let's quickly move on to offline attacks. In offline attacks, what happens is Windows has not started, which means that the SAM file is not locked and is actually accessible to everybody. So any user who wants to crack somebody else's Windows login password normally will execute an offline attack. Online attack is generally done when, if you're a system administrator, imagine one of your employees leaves the company and changes the password just before leaving and does not tell you the password. So how do you recover that account? Using the online attack that we have just discussed. Offline attack is something that criminals normally use to steal somebody else's data. So let me actually share with all of you a real life scenario. So the scenario is very simple. Imagine that you and I are friends. We are studying in the same college. We live in the same hostel. However, secretly, I don't like you. I want to actually hack your computer, then steal your data, and make your life miserable. So what do I do? So this is the scenario. And the solution is very simple. I will wait for you to leave your room. I will break into your room through the window. I switch on your computer. Windows boots. Windows asks me for login password. I don't know your password. I try to guess your password. But nothing works. I am very disappointed. I leave your room. And I return to my room. I then attend the ASCH course and figure out how to crack somebody else's Windows login password. So that is the scenario that I'm talking about. If you want to crack somebody else's Windows login password, what are the steps that you need to execute? Step number